I present to you Miss Tiffany Cabán.
I don't know how I follow up that introduction.
Be yourself.
Well, first of all, thank y'all for coming out. I really appreciate it. These are my favorite things to do. I like being able to just have some conversations and answer questions and hear concerns, and because that's really what it's about. And to be honest, I never thought that I would be running. Can you hear me okay? I would be running for district attorney. Like you said, I'm a career public defender. And the reason why I became a public defender is very much so tied to how I grew up and where I grew up. My parents grew up in the Woodside housing projects, and I grew up in South Richmond Hill, Queens, not too far from here. But the projects is where I spent a lot of my time. My grandmother was a foster parent who eventually adopted a couple of kids that are around my age, so growing up, that's where my best friends were. And being in places that were just continually over-policed, over-criminalized, resource-starved was something that I carry with me to the work that I do, and recognizing that. A lot of times when I think about the work that I do as a public defender, I see that really there's not much that separates me from my clients. And in fact, it's almost hard to pinpoint. And usually the only thing I can look to is the fact that my dad got a union job, which meant that we had good health care, that he had a steady paycheck, that I got to get an education, a higher education, and then probably most importantly, that I got access to therapy services, right? Because when we talk about our communities that have been, again, historically over-policed, over-criminalized, there's also the communities that experience trauma at like the highest rates with the least amount of access to resources. So, for example, the home that my mom grew up in was not always the most stable. My grandfather was incredibly physically abusive, to the point where my grandmother left him and my mom dropped out of high school to take care of her family. And so, certainly when you experience unhealthy relationships growing up, that's what you find. You find unhealthy relationships, right? Like that's what's modeled for you. And that's what was modeled for me, unhealthy relationships. But it's the idea that access to resources give you the ability to break cycles, to be healthier, to make better choices. And I go back to my grandfather. My grandfather is a man that I met as a young child. My mom let him back into our lives because he was dying. He was essentially drinking himself to death. And the man that I got to know was patient, funny. Like he played guitar for me all the time. He told me these like really wild stories, and I loved him. I loved him so much. And when I got older, being able to think about the fact that this man who hurt his family in some really significant ways, and this really incredibly patient, funny, loving grandfather, they were both so equally true. And he was somebody that very easily could have been cycling in and out of our justice system. And our justice system is one that does not look at a man like my grandfather and say, he was a Korean War veteran who served our country, earned a Purple Heart, came home with PTSD, self-medicated with alcohol, and where were our systems in place to support him so that he could support his family? And that's the way that we should be viewing our system. When we talk about our DA's offices being a place that says our goal is public safety. Our goal is not just to punish people for the sake of punishing them. Our goal is not just to throw as many people into cages as we can, but our goal is public safety, which means understanding the root causes of harm, and then giving people the access to change behaviors. And most often that means the ability to have access to healing. Our system is one that takes public health issues and punts them through our justice system, right? The way that we deal with poverty is our court system. The way that we deal with mental health issues is our court system. Rikers Island is the largest mental health provider in our city. The way that we deal with substance use disorder is our court system. We're criminalizing things that are just about struggles and lack of access to resources. Rather than saying, what would promote public safety? Investing resources back into our resource-starved communities. What also serves public safety? Going after and prosecuting bad actors that are destabilizing entire communities. As a public defender, I represent folks who are arrested for stealing to support their substance use, rather than prosecuting the doctor who's overprescribing opioids, who's dealing drugs to our communities. I represent folks who are criminalized for homelessness, rather than prosecuting bad landlords who are unlawfully evicting or predatory lenders who are stealing people's homes. I represent folks who are criminalized for fighting back at their workplaces, rather than prosecuting employers that are misclassifying workers stealing wages. Here alone in Queens, we have more workforce debts, and we're not holding developers and construction companies accountable for those debts. And so this is really about saying we need to reprioritize and shift our thinking about how do we keep our communities safe, because stability equals public safety. When people know where they're going to lay their head down at night, when they have access to regular health care, mental health services, when they have job opportunities, education, it is the best way to naturally reduce crime. And let's think about the fact that anybody that you do incarcerate, 97, 98% of the time, they're going to re-enter our communities, and we're not putting anybody in a position to be able to stay in their communities without continuing to struggle or harm or commit crime again. So for me, this is very much so a continuation of the work that I've done as a public defender. What we do as public defenders is we fight our hardest to keep people out of jail and with their families. So we do things like, our goal is to reduce recidivism, to make sure that our clients are in a position where they're not being arrested again. Our goal is to keep, again, people out of jail. Our goal is to call out the system and say, hey, you're not applying the law fairly. You're not applying it equally and fairly across racial and class lines. And so those public defender goals are exactly what we need to bring to our DA's offices and say, forget about caring about just the number of people we throw in jail, but the number of lives we stabilize, the numbers of communities we stabilize, the number of lives we save, period, and taking that kind of approach. Also, when you think about the job being public safety, you understand that we need to not just be reactive, but proactive, and start intervening and interrupting harm before it happens, rather than waiting for it to snowball and get bad, and then say, well, we're gonna lock up this person. So what I would love to do is take any of your questions about the race, about some of the things that we're going to be trying to do. I'd love to hear from you. Does anybody have a question? Yeah.
In June, is this the primary to decide who fills the vacancy, or is there another one in September? How is that working, please?
So June is the Democratic primary, but because this is Queens, right, for all intents and purposes, this is the election. The general election is in November. So you'll vote in June, and then you'll vote again in November. But in an area as blue as we are, this is about finding the Democratic candidate that is your candidate, because a Democrat is going to be in that seat.
And that's what I'm trying to lead up to.
Yeah.
I don't know what the Republicans are doing in the general election. Maybe they will have a candidate.
They'll probably run somebody.
Right, that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, but there aren't enough registered. I mean, as it is now, there are 850,000 registered Democrats in Queens. I think there's less than half of that are in Queens that are registered Republicans.
That was my third follow-up.
Yeah.
To me, we all respect you.
Thank you.
But, I mean, we wouldn't be here. But have you ever thought of a backup plan, a third-party nomination, to say, now, wait a minute, this is not the end. There's more we have to, for the people that need to be represented. Has anybody, maybe, if I could put a seed in your head, you're very articulate, you're very sound and sincere, and you have good governmental law enforcement policies and policies that help people. To me, what makes you a mensch, you're a very well-rounded person. That comes from my heart, because your experiences are my experiences. My father was a World War II veteran. He was an alcoholic, a chain smoker who died of lung cancer in 2005. I tried my best home hospice to save him, but I was single at the time, so I was, by the grace of God, I did the best. I came from a broken environment and everything, and by the grace of God, when I grew up, I was never into drugs or alcohol, gang membership. I came from a Catholic family across the street, St. Gabriel's Defense. My grandmother, who was a first-generation Italian-American, she donated that fence, Jennifer Nardiello. This is part of my neighborhood growing up around here, and it's humble for me to come back here. I live in Jackson Heights, and when I went to the home and I was invited there, you spoke about children with disabilities, and it really broke my heart. It really did. That I didn't really realize that a DA would have that much power to hurt disabled people the most.
But there's a lot of power to help too.
That's what I'm getting at. The
Yeah.
power was never used. If you do become DA, and I pray that you do, or if you ever, for some reason, the Democratic Party in Queens does something with the ballot, I hope you would still run for the general if anything happens. But if you do become DA, is there a specific policy or reform that could be done for disability people? They commit a crime, but maybe they didn't really know they committed a crime.
Yeah,
They may have a mental disability.
There are a lot of things that you can do in terms of changing the policies in the Queen's office particularly. So for example, if you're somebody who struggles with mental health issues or substance use, one of the really terrible policies in Queens right now is if you want access to drug treatment court or you want access to mental health court, you have to plead guilty up front.
What?
And then if you struggle in these programs, which you know it's a process, then you've already pled guilty up front and you can be resentenced to upstate prison time. And the whole idea is that again we should not be criminalizing folks for public health issues. We should say you're mentally ill. We recognize that that's driving your behavior, that you don't have access to regular mental health care. So our goal, our priority should be not to criminalize you, but to provide you with the support you need. And the same goes for substance use. So that's one way. But the other way too is to again reinvest in our communities up front. So for example, many people don't know that the Queens District Attorney's Office is sitting on $100 million worth of federal asset forfeiture money. So that's money that was stolen from our communities in a big bank fraud. And what I am committed to doing with that money is participatory budgeting. I want to give it back to our communities. I don't want to go in and say, hey, I know it all, and I'm going to decide for everybody how we use this money. Because every community, one, knows itself best. It also has different needs from the community next to them. So one community may say, well, where we really want the resources is in our schools and libraries. And another community may say, well, where we really need it is with more access to healthcare services or more job opportunities or whatever it might be. And again, when we go back to this idea that stability equals public safety, that when people have access to all of their basic needs, that is the best way to drive down crime, all kinds of crime, whether it is low level, non-violent, or violent crime, then it makes all the sense in the world to take that money and give it right back to our communities to give them the things that they want and need. Does anybody else have another question? Yeah.
So I know that it's very problematic the way that the current metrics of success, supposed success for the DA's office are things like numbers of convictions and length of sentences.
Yeah.
I was wondering what types of metrics should maybe replace those
Yes.
as signs of success.
So one of the, I think most people agree on what some of the criminal justice reform things we need are, right? Most people agree we need to end cash bail. We need to have discovery reform, meaning we need to hand over evidence right away. We need to decriminalize poverty. But what's really important to recognize is that if you don't change the why, if you don't change what your goals are, you're going to continue to incentivize bad practices and bad decision making. So you can take a policy, but if your goal is to get convictions or jail sentences, then that policy that was designed to reduce harm, keep people in their communities and reduce crime is not actually going to have that impact. You have to change the why, what you're doing, what your goals are. So for me, instead of measuring all of our success through how many convictions can you get, how long of sentences you can get, there are things that we can measure and say what your goal is to reduce recidivism. For the cases that you are handling and prosecuting, how many of those are you ensuring that people don't cycle back into our criminal justice system? Are you decarcerating? So are you keeping people out of jail and providing them with supportive services that are having a benefit and a good impact on their lives? And are you applying, this is the biggest one, are you applying the law fairly across racial and class lines? Because, for example, when we talk about prosecuting for marijuana offenses, there is no disparity between what percentage of black and brown folks use marijuana and what percentage of white folks use marijuana. Yet, we're only locking up and giving criminal records that then create barriers to access to employment, to housing, to all kinds of education opportunities to black and brown folks. Another big one is our gravity knife laws. I don't know if you are familiar, but there is this really horrible statute in New York that says if you have a knife on you and can kind of open it up with one hand, it's called a gravity knife and it's a misdemeanor. And these are work tools, right? They're literally knives that you can buy in any hardware store. They're knives that you can go up on Amazon right now and order online. How is it being prosecuted? 96% of those prosecutions are black and brown working folks. And then of those, over 87% are men. And what's really dangerous about this statute is that if you have any prior criminal conviction, to be jump the turnstile, then that misdemeanor, they can automatically bump it up to a felony that comes along with mandatory minimum upstate prison time. Yeah.
For buying a knife I can get at Amazon that's sold throughout the United States and America?
That's right. But the way that the law is enacted is that we're only arresting black and brown men for it, and we're not pursuing stores, right? So if you can tell that the only function of this law is to disproportionately criminalize the same communities that we have. So we have to stop doing those things. And when you're keeping data and saying we're gonna make data public, it's a way for our communities to hold the office accountable, because nobody's actually seeing what's happening behind all of those closed doors.
Is it, I think I can mention the source because I went to a town hall meeting with Miss Jessica Ramos and she loves it.
She endorsed us, so I know she loves us. I love her too, by the way.
I want you to know, I want you to know that she's a wonderful person. I'm proud to be a constituent of her. But she said something that a lot of us were shaking our heads in disbelief. Is it 100% true that if a cop frisks you, if they think you committed a crime, and if a man has a condom in his wallet or on his body, they can automatically try to assume that you're looking for hanky-panky and you may have a condom on you? Is that true or false?
No.
You get in big trouble for it? She's saying they were doing that.
Oh, she's talking about the sex work.
Yeah.
In terms of taking, in terms of getting rid of the law that allows to use condoms as evidence or of loitering for the purpose of prostitution. So what they're doing in Albany right now is they're trying to have certain pieces of legislation repealed. Because what's happening is that it's ending in a disproportionate number of poor black and brown women and black and brown, specifically trans women, being caught up in our criminal justice system. Yeah. Well, thank you, everybody. I really, really appreciate it.
Pat,
And
do
I
you
know.
have any questions? No.
Do
you have any questions? Kathy, Darren?
Do you have any sort of ideas or plans for some education department within the DA's office?
Yeah, so what I really want to do is try to build more partnerships. Part of what we're also going to do is bring in our community steering committee, and we want to have representatives from a lot of different areas, because we've, again, by punting public health issues to our criminal justice system, asked our district attorneys to be experts in things they were never meant to be experts in, right? Like, as a lawyer, I'm not an expert in mental health. I may have a degree of experience with mental health issues, right? But I'm not an expert. Just like in my office, we work with social workers. You would never ask a social worker to be the lawyer, yet you're asking the lawyers to be the social worker, the doctor, all of these different things. So I want to make sure that we have education professionals, that we have mental health professionals, you know, and like diverse professional backgrounds to bring expertise that we just don't have. But for whatever reason, we decided it's okay for us to make all of these really important, impactful decisions around. And then again, building those partnerships with community-based organizations so that we're kind of outsourcing support and keeping things out of our criminal justice system that never belonged there in the first place, so that we can concentrate our limited resources on prosecuting the crime that our system should have always been focused on prosecuting. Yeah.
Just curious, what's the number of people that were arrested for the knives, the black and browns?
Ooh, I don't know the numbers offhand, but it's a lot. I have represented so many clients that have been charged with possession, and what happens is that you don't have the knife out or anything. You can even make the arrest under the case law if the clip that holds the knife is sticking out. So you have folks that are commuting to and from work that sometimes get stopped, and it's just something that you can see numbers-wise gets disproportionately prosecuted towards other folks, right? Again, if you're saying that these knives are legal, then why are we allowing stores to sell them? Why are we allowing employers to provide them?
Even if they have proof of their employment, still it's a crime.
What's that?
Even if they have proof that they can show the cop, I guess.
Yep.
I work in a
Yep. In fact, usually what we do is, and the damage is done by that point, right? Somebody goes through a criminal court arraignment, maybe they miss a day of work, or maybe bail is set and now they can't get out because they can't afford the bail. But usually what we do to resolve those cases is we get a letter from the employer saying, this person opens boxes for work, or this person, cuts up tie for work, and so they carry this item. Yeah.
Maybe an ID card with a special title, maybe it's pulled over. It requires it.
Or maybe we just get rid of that.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have to wrap it up because Tiffany has to hit another venue. I would love to take a group picture with all the constituents that came out to show you warmth and love and to contribute for something that we all believe in because we do want to change. I would like to thank you for acknowledging the area and the community and giving us your time and your voice. And I wish you nothing but the best, and you definitely have my vote.